Sometimes you see these games that are huge for years and years. They talk about making them, show us the development process, and nothing. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the 5 most ambitious games that never got released. Starting off with number 5 is 8 Days. Now, 8 Days was a PlayStation 3 exclusive that had been described by both developers and people familiar with the project alike as jaw-dropping. A gentleman by the name of Richard Bunn had this to say. It had directed moments, which were big cinematic scenes similar to God of War. It had driving sections, duck and cover style gameplay. It was pretty spectacular. Some of the stuff that was never shown publicly would definitely have impressed if it ever made it out into the public. This was an extremely ambitious title in which the developers were really trying to make something that was a big, kind of Michael Bay action movie that you just existed in. It was narrative driven, but it was also action driven. The footage I've watched of the game doesn't look like next-gen game footage or anything. It's from 2006, but considering that's when it's from, it is actually pretty impressive. The first real look anybody got of the game was a tech demo of a gas station blowing up. Again, this isn't like the most shocking thing you're ever going to see as far as graphics. It's from 2006, but keeping that in mind, it is a really nice looking thing. The game overall was a big project about attempting to merge Hollywood and game development into one thing. They had stuntmen from The Dark Knight, art directors that would go on to work on Detective Pikachu. They almost had John Travolta and Halle Berry with roles in the game. Developers who have been asked about this game say things like, it was way ahead of its time, it cost too much money to make, and ultimately, it really came off like a pretty standard third-person shooter 15 years later. One specifically said, I think now it would have been a less impressive game, less revolutionary, a bit more like a standard game. But I mean, considering how far third-person shooters and set-piece action-based games have come in this period of time, it's kind of a bold statement, actually. At number 4 is Prince of Persia Redemption. Earlier in the year, some footage came up of a game that just absolutely looked tremendously fun. It was titled Prince of Persia Redemption, and it was a game that at one point was actually in development. The video that released was actually a pitch, a computer-generated, pre-rendered sequence that was intended to look as much like a real game as is possible. This is actually something that Ubisoft has done for other games as well, like Assassin's Creed 3. Although they don't release these videos to the public, they're intended to function internally as a means to tell everybody what they're trying to do, basically, or in a lot of cases, pitch the game to higher-ups. One of the developers that was involved with it said, unfortunately, one of the main reasons why it was not followed through on, it was canceled, is because the original creator of Prince of Persia, Jordan Mencher, still holds the license rights, so they make less money off of those games than internal IP. And that makes sense, but watching this video, it is really hard not to want to play this game. It obviously has all the staples of a Prince of Persia game, but there's something about it that just makes it look much more kinetic to me than any other one. It reminds me of Arkham in some ways, but obviously not far removed from the actual Prince of Persia conventions that in some ways also inspired Assassin's Creed. In my opinion, you can watch this and you kind of think, this looks like if Batman was in Assassin's Creed and it was Prince of Persia. And wow, that would just be great, wouldn't it? I mean, I am of course very excited for the Sands of Time remake. That is, no pun intended, a timeless classic. And it's been way too long since we have had Prince of Persia grace any console, but I can just go ahead and tell you, the thing I'd really like to try, at very least, is Prince of Persia Redemption. It just looked like a really fresh, kinetic update on the formula, and as far as I know, they're actually refreshing the gameplay of Sands of Time some, more so than the graphics. And I hope there's some influence from this game there, as well as going forward, I hope that we see a new Prince of Persia game. It's getting old waiting. But on the other hand, it seems like that would be the reason they would remaster the old one. Still, Ubisoft, give us more Prince of Persia. At number 3, a game called Rainbow Six Patriots was in development for a while, and it had been shown off to the public several times. Now, it was a game that was a little bit controversial in content. Some of the missions involved very civilian-oriented casualty situations, for the best way of putting it. And a group of ex-Marines actually formed a little terrorist cell based on some video clips and an article that they saw of the game. Now, it called itself a militia, titled Forever Enduring, Always Ready, or FEAR as an acronym. They spent around $87,000 stockpiling weapons, which is, as you know, a very normal thing to do. They had actually intended to take over a military base, bomb a park, bomb a dam, poison an apple crop, make an attempt on President Obama's life, and so on and so forth. Stuff that, I don't know, is kind of wild. The interesting thing is they were recruiting people off of an article on Rainbow Six Patriots. Now, Rainbow Six Patriots wasn't fully canceled. A lot of the work that went into it was switched over to Rainbow Six Siege, but also internal development has been restarted several times during the course of creating Siege. And the story, well, let's just say it had some connotations given the fact that it inspired some terrorists to do a terrorism. Switching the game over to a multiplayer shooter allowed them to get out of those narrative situations and obviously refocus on attempting to create a team-based multiplayer situation that has ultimately turned out to be a huge success. So business-wise, possibly a better decision anyways. And also you have to wonder if that type of thing creates guilt in people who are working on the game. Like, did I help inspire that? So I can totally understand why they scrapped the project in that state and moved on to something else. At number 2 was Dead Island 2, which was a game that built on the concept of Dead Island, of course, but took us from a fictional island called Benoi into California, where it would take place in real-life cities that people would be familiar with. It was showed off at Gamescom 2014, and it really went above and beyond the feature set in the first game. For instance, the crafting system was expanded significantly, and as far as I'm concerned, even cooler, they added co-op for up to 8 players, which Dead Island with 8-player co-op, I would really like to play that. A lot of the ways that you could describe this version of the game, it sounded a lot like Left 4 Dead, more than a survival game in the way that it is. However, all indication was that it did not abandon the survival type gameplay and that it was just trying to add in that co-op feel to what was already a robust zombie experience as far as I'm concerned. This game was never actually canceled. It has actually changed hands as far as developers go. Deep Silver had Jaeger Entertainment working on it until 2016, when it moved over to Sumo Digital, where it was developed for 3 years and then moved over to Dam Buster Studios last year in 2019. And that's totally ignoring that Techland, the developers of the original game, were going to develop Dead Island 2, but instead began working on Dying Light, and as you know, are still working on Dying Light 2. It's been a little over a year since we've heard anything about this game, really, but they never canceled it. I mean, I still have hope. But, I mean, a lot of the bigger stuff in this, they added crafting, they added rage, which was a mechanic that would force you to make decisions differently, and apparently revamped the combat system entirely. I'd be pretty interested in seeing exactly what they meant by that. Would it lean into the Left 4 Dead area? I don't know, we haven't had a Left 4 Dead in forever, so would that be the worst thing? And finally, at number 1, I don't think you could do this list without mentioning this game. Star Wars Battlefront 3, the original one, the one developed by Free Radical, by the people who had been developing the Battlefront games at the time. I mean, they were really pulling out all the stops in this game. As far as dogfight footage over Coruscant, we've never had anything that even really compares to what we've seen just in some of the leaked footage of this game. Still, now, in this time period, nothing has been on this scale. I mean, I'm still incredibly impressed by what this game looked like it was trying to do. It went above and beyond what I think anyone expected it to be. I mean, you were going from dogfights in the air in Coruscant right up into space above Coruscant, and it was incredibly detailed, huge environments, lots of cool buildings, ships, effects, and just to be totally frank, as much as I actually do like the new Battlefront games, some of the stuff they've done is actually incredible, and I want to give credit where credit is due. Star Wars Battlefront 3 looked like it was gonna be something else. Which out of these do you wish you could play the most? For me, it's Star Wars Battlefront 3. God, I want to play that game. You, on the other hand, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. The best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification bell and enable all notifications. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on GameRanx.